In today's video, we have lots of NHL news and rumors to take a look at. Today's trade rumors revolve around the Florida Panthers, San Jose Sharks, Calgary Flames, Carolina Hurricanes, Seattle Kraken, and the Buffalo Sabres. Plus, we have big news on the Calgary Flames' new arena. We have a few signings to discuss, and the Columbus Blue Jackets finally have a new coach. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots of stuff to cover here today, as well as some trade rumors, which we'll get to here in a few minutes' time. First up, this is the 2-year anniversary today of one of the biggest trades we've seen in recent NHL history. Arguably even all the way in NHL history, to be honest. It was a blockbuster of a deal then. It's had nothing but major impacts for Florida ever since, but it's the 2-year anniversary of the Matthew Tkachuk trade from Calgary to Florida from Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau. The Florida Panthers, of course, have gone on to be two-time appearances in the Stanley Cup Finals, one-time Stanley Cup champion, and obviously things have worked out extremely well on the Florida side. Jonathan Huberdeau hasn't really worked out in Calgary. Mackenzie Weegar has been pretty good for them. I think he's been okay. No issues there. But on the grand scheme of things, Calgary did not get better. There was people who thought, and I wasn't even really sure how to feel in the beginning either, maybe the Flames might have actually gotten better, because Jonathan Huberdeau was a heck of a player in Florida. But obviously, every team has a different fit, depending on who you're playing with, the city. There's lots of impacts on players. And clearly, Calgary just hasn't really been a great fit for Huberdeau. But on paper, in the beginning, it's like, okay, Calgary might be able to continue at the same kind of projected pace, if not maybe even be a little bit better. And I thought Florida, as much as they got, I think, the best long-term value in that trade for Tkachuk, thinking, okay, I think Tkachuk is going to be the best player in the trade. Jonathan Huberdeau might be the better player now because he had a 100-point season. It was kind of debatable. I was like, long-term, Florida's probably going to win this deal, but short-term, Calgary's going to make out pretty good. And it just really hasn't worked that way at all. I thought Florida might take a small step back short-term for a big long-term step forward, and maybe win the Cup or B Cup contenders maybe in the 3 to 5 years is kind of what I thought, but happened a lot faster for sure. So it's a blockbuster deal that's worked out quite well on one side, and be curious to see how the Flames continue to mitigate things on their side with the Huberdeau contract. It's obviously not looking so good here now. It'd be nice if we get another blockbuster deal like that around this time of year. Obviously, it certainly makes the world of hockey a lot more interesting. And of course, that was the anniversary, the 2-year anniversary of the Flames trade with the Florida Panthers. And of course, other big news today for the Flames, is that the new arena. We talked a couple days ago that there was going to be an announcement today, and it did happen. The Calgary Flames started with all of their local and provincial government officials have the kind of getting the first shovels in the ground. They released their first renderings of the new project, with the arena, and it looks really cool. Hopefully, it turns out to be every bit as good as it appears like it could. Calgary is in desperate need of a new arena, so obviously it's going to be a couple of years before they will be ready to roll. But I believe they were targeting 26-27 as the opening period of time. So obviously the Flames are somewhat rebuilding right now. Hopefully by the time that new arena opens, they have a lot more reason to be excited and have a lot more younger players that have taken big steps forward and developed, etc., and can certainly put a good product on the ice in the early days of that new building. But certainly, so clearly a big day in Calgary. This has been a long time coming. They've had multiple agreements kind of fall to the wayside and not really move forward with the city here in recent years. So nice to see it's all full steam ahead with this new project for the Calgary Flames. Now, as I mentioned, we have some signing news today as well. We also had an arbitration hearing this morning. Restricted free agent Spencer Stastney and the Nashville Predators had their arbitration hearing early this morning. So we should have a decision by Wednesday sometime, usually about 48 hours. Just a reminder that the player is looking for a 1-year, one-way deal. I think it was $925, I believe he was looking for, and the team is offering a 2-year, two-way contract with an NHL salary of league minimum $775 and an AHL salary of $125. So I'll be curious to see where things are settled. But now that they've had their hearing started, they cannot settle this on their own. They'll have to await the arbitrators' decision and go with that. Signing in Utah today, they've signed their another one of their great prospects they picked up here in 2024 NHL draft, first round pick, 24th overall, Cole Beaudoin, gets his 3-year entry-level contract. The 6'2" left shot centerman, of course, put up 62 points in 67 games this past year in the OHL with the Barrie Colts. So it looks like a real good prospect there for Utah. And the Devils have re-signed Santeri Hataka. He's the left shot defenseman who signs a 1-year deal, league minimum $775. Made 12 appearances last year with the Devils and the Blue Line in the 23-24 campaign. A couple of tidbits here on the Columbus Blue Jackets. One, there is a video on the channel dedicated to the news. If you missed it earlier, so you can certainly check that out, where I went into a little bit more in-depth analysis. But they've hired Dean Evason to be their new head coach. It came down to Evason and former Oilers bench boss Jay Woodcroft. There was belief back, I think about a week or so ago, that Todd McClellan was very much in the mix as well. I'm not sure, how much contract played a role in all this, but it was believed that to some degree that's why McClellan came out of the race, and it came down to these two guys, and Evason is their guy. Now, obviously, Evason to me will be, I think, a pretty good coach there. He's got about 5 years experience as a head coach, or just shy of 5 years, like parts of 5 seasons with the Minnesota Wild. The 4 full seasons he was there, they had a winning record. They were in the playoffs. Certainly had a lot of regular season success. He was a Jack Adams finalist 1 year as well. So certainly, for a guy that was his first time at the job, he did pretty well. He's a fiery guy, lots of energy, certainly going to be lots of emotion, and he demands hard work. He's going to be a demanding coach in that sense. So for a lot of young players, up and coming guys in the Jackets organization, in theory, it should be a good fit. So we'll see there how things work out. Now, one of their young players as well that's looking for a new deal, Columbus Blue Jackets youngster Kirill Marchenko was recently interviewed and seems to be kind of upset that he's still waiting on a contract. A couple of the mentions here from him in the article kind of references the fact that he has not received what he would refer to as a worthy offer as of yet. He has not had any conversations at all with new general manager Don Waddell, and he's open, he said, to short, long-term deals. He just wants the process to move along faster and would like, an offer from the team that is, somewhat worthy. Clearly, the Blue Jackets have had other things as top priorities. Obviously, they had the Don Waddell addition and change in the general manager seat, took some time to get to. Once he got there, a lot of his focus has been on the coaching staff and getting things sorted that way. They've done a little bit of other player business, but certainly not really prioritizing some of the restricted free agents. So obviously he's hoping to get a contract done, avoid arbitration, and we'll see what happens. But as of right now, it just sounded like a player that wasn't overly thrilled with the process and how things have gone. To me, he looks like he's got a real good potential there and had a real nice season for them. So hopefully they don't end up with any issues with the relationship going sour here based on his comments. Hopefully Waddell can kind of get things looked after here and get Marchenko signed sooner than later to make him, happy and content and see his value here. Because, like I said, he's a good young player with a, good upside so far. I'd hate to see them have a player who kind of, has the relationship go bad this early on just because of all the changes that they've ran into there so far. Now, as I mentioned, a variety of trade talk around the NHL. Today, I want to take a look at the San Jose Sharks maybe being interested in adding a top 4 defenseman. And a guy like Aaron Ekblad out of Florida has been mentioned here. Now, local reporter Sheng Peng, who's the local beat writer for the San Jose Sharks, has made mention that they definitely are in the market for another defenseman, ideally somebody who can play top 4 minutes. Mentions that they may still explore some of the veteran guys on the UFA market, which they can probably get pretty cheap at this point if those players are interested in going to San Jose. He mentions players like Tyson Barrie, John Klingberg, Justin Schultz, who at this point remain unsigned. At this point, players, the veteran guys like that, especially that they may not really envision themselves playing on a rebuilding team, But perhaps if they sign for a cheap enough contract and have a good year, they can go to a rebuilding team and get flipped to a contender at the deadline. That might be the motivation that some of these guys now have to use if they can't get on a contending team right from the get-go. So obviously those are some names that are still out there with experience on the UFA market that Peng feels are potential guys that the Sharks could target. But he says he wouldn't rule out a big trade, bringing in a more experienced, coveted top 4 guy, and mentions Aaron Ekblad by name as somebody he could see as being a potential target. Now, we know the Florida Panthers definitely have their fair share of a tight salary cap situation. They lost a fair bit of players throughout the offseason because of that situation. Big turnover after winning the Stanley Cup. And at this point, to have a little bit of breathing room to make other additions probably would be something that they would like. But at the same time, there was rumors about Ekblad, especially in the earlier part of the offseason, because we knew that they were likely going to lose at least one or maybe multiple defensemen through free agency that they just were not going to be able to compete with on the open market. So like Brandon Montour, Oliver Ekman-Larsson have both departed. Kulikov re-signed for pretty cheap. They already locked up Gustav Forsling. But the belief around Ekblad and being moved earlier was so that they'd have a better chance to keep Brandon Montour. But Montour, as of course, is already long gone. So to lose another veteran defenseman who's been in Florida his entire career would really be a blow to that lineup. Now, of course, for example, with the San Jose Sharks, I don't know. One thing that might come up, because we've heard Mario Ferrero's name mentioned in trade talk, that he's certainly available for the right deal. But at the same time, from San Jose's perspective, to move out, regardless of if you think Ferrero is better than Ekblad or Ekblad's better than Ferrero, that part is irrelevant. Doesn't really matter. They're both guys that have a decent amount of experience in the league and can play top 4 minutes in the NHL. So to move one for the other, for San Jose's perspective, to me, doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, of course, from Florida's perspective, they would get Ferrero to be at a cheaper contract, and maybe they can save some cap space that way. They may or may not like the lefty-righty, set up with their other D, because there's not a lot there on the right side, especially with Montour not in the mix anymore. So I'm not really sure that a deal like that for Florida would be something they would do. But obviously, if they do move Ekblad, which at this point it's difficult to say, there's been rumors that he's made it known to Panthers management, because he's in the final year of his contract, that he's willing to take a pay cut to stay. So we'll see what they work out. Obviously, he's been, a long-term fixture there in Florida. He was the former first overall pick in his draft year. Obviously, they just won a Stanley Cup. He has no desire to want to leave. But it's a business, and there's a lot of tight situations cap-wise that could prove difficult for the team to navigate through without, shedding some more money. If you look at other options to shed money, there's not a lot of other options. I do think a guy like Spencer Knight, though, is questionable. I think long-term, there's maybe still some hope that he can become the team's number 1 goalie. They still have Bobrovsky for a couple of more seasons. I would like to think that they probably would like a young goalie like Knight to take over from that point. But until then, if they're going to keep both of them for the time being, that's a lot of money to have tied up in the goaltending position. They also brought back Chris Driedger as well to compete in that top 3 goalie spots as well. So again, there's lots of healthy competition that way. Hard to say what the Panthers do, but if they do decide that they want to free up some more space in Ekblad, the Sharks might be a landing spot for him here, according to their local beat writers. But if it's not Ekblad, don't be shocked to see San Jose make some more moves and make this team a little bit more competitive throughout between now and the beginning of the season. So we'll see. Obviously, there's been some other moves around the league that's been rumored. Another name that's come up is Carolina's youngster, and he's not super young anymore, but Jesperi Kotkaniemi, a player that he's been in the rumor mill for a long time, has never really worked out in Carolina. That offer sheet is looking horrendous, in my opinion. Obviously, we knew Carolina went after Kotkaniemi. More than anything, I think, is a revenge tactic for them going after Sebastian Aho. Of course, they kept Aho and matched the offer. But in Montreal's case, they let them take Kotkaniemi because it was a gross overpayment on a 1-year deal. They then extended him on a much lower rate, and even that's now, after he's had a chance to play for a couple of years, seems like way too much as well. So at this point, Carolina does have a decent amount of space, but they do need to sign Seth Jarvis. They're trying to sign Marty Necas. They signed Jack Drury already. And with what they've lost, they not only want to get Jarvis and Necas looked after, because the belief is now they're going to try to keep Necas instead of trading him, as long as he agrees to sign, of course. And they need to probably add another top 6 on top of that. So that's going to be tricky to do. So moving a guy like Kotkaniemi would prove to be very, very helpful. I'm honestly surprised they didn't exercise a buyout. And at this point where they have arbitration hearings scheduled for Necas, it's still possible that Kotkaniemi could end up getting bought out if they can't find a trade, because they will get another buyout window once that arbitration case is resolved. And the only condition of that second buyout window is that it has to be at least a $4 million contract. So everything else about Kotkaniemi's contract qualifies. So it's not like it couldn't happen. I think the first window came and went. The team decided to probably I guess you could say examine the trade market, see where things are at. And at this point, nothing's materialized. But again, given the fact that they signed Drury, they'd like to see him elevated in the lineup. They want to get Jarvis and Necas looked after and then try to add another top 6 to try to replace some of these other guys that they've lost. It's not going to be easy. To get rid of that contract would be huge. There's been some talk that Kotkaniemi to Calgary might be an option, given the Flames are rebuilding. They may have to add a sweetener in there for them to take him off their hands. But, Calgary could be a landing spot for him. And could Nazem Kadri be that other top 6 forward that maybe they're looking for? It would make acquiring him a lot easier, moving the over $4 million they're paying to Kotkaniemi right now. As we talked about Kadri yesterday, and the belief is that we've heard from Dave Pagnotta that he would welcome a return to the Avalanche. Well, Carolina's been very much in the mix there as well. I can't say with certainty that Kadri would waive to go to Carolina, but you can see where the fit would be. So again, could there be a trade there? It's possible, but with Carolina moving Kotkaniemi, another possibility as well could be to Columbus. Of course, we know Dom Odell, the GM there now, is the one who signed that contract in the first place with Kotkaniemi, bringing him over from the Montreal Canadiens. So maybe he'd want to give him more of an opportunity with the Blue Jackets. And we know that they're trying to move Patrick Laine. Laine has connections with some of the Finn players on the Hurricanes. Could we see a trade that would involve Kotkaniemi and Laine? We know that the belief was on a Laine trade that they're probably going to have to retain 50% and maybe get a mid-round pick back is probably what they're looking at, given the diminished value of the asset that Laine has become after, a couple of disappointing seasons. So obviously, to get a contract back like Kotkaniemi, at least it's a player who can play in your lineup. And if they get him going and find a way to help realize a higher return and better results, then maybe they get a good player out of it. Hard to say. If it doesn't work out, well, it could be a waste. But at least it's not as much of a AAV than Laine. The problem is it has more term on it, so it's hard to say what the right deal is. But certainly, I honestly think it would be kind of a wait-and-see approach. I think Carolina could go the buyout route, but a trade involving Laine or a trade involving Kadri, to me, seems like real possibilities. I know we've seen some connections of Carolina and Nikolai Ehlers as well. I think there's some interest that maybe he could become that other top 6 forward they're looking for. Problem is I don't see the Jets taking Kotkaniemi, so that would be problematic. And it would probably depend on what else they were able to offer the Jets for an Ehlers trade. If the Jets are going to move Ehlers, and the belief is that he was quite open to it and wanting it, that they were going to end up wanting another forward back that could play top 6, top 9 minutes, and maybe a young defenseman or some kind of combination like that. And at this point, Carolina has some pieces that might be interesting to the Jets, but is there options they really want to move? It's difficult to say. Really boils down to to what exactly Winnipeg wants. So I'm not really sure about Ehlers being connected into like a Kotkaniemi trade, but Kotkaniemi for Laine to me makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1 deal, but both players being involved in a trade for both sides to me makes just a ton of sense. Calgary makes some sense for Kotkaniemi. A buyout also makes sense if they get the Nature's deal done, get a second buyout window and go down that route where it's a 1/3 buyout where he's still young and then it's restricted free agent year. So we'll see what they do. But either way, I do a lot of belief that the Carolina Hurricanes will like to move on from that contract. Other teams in the mix for Nikolai Ehlers, because when it comes to Laine and, obviously the Hurricanes and Kotkaniemi, that's kind of all interconnected there, so to speak. But Ehlers, like I said, may not be the answer there. But teams like Buffalo and Seattle are both still very much considering different moves as well to improve their top six. And they've both been linked to Nikolai Ehlers as well. Again, I believe the Sabres have been linked to a number of players throughout the offseason that can play that type of role. They've yet to land one. I think to some degree it could be the players not wanting to sign extensions because everybody they've talked to has been needing a contract or an extension. I believe Rutger McGroarty was in the mix there. Nikolai Ehlers, we've heard Natchez too. So the Sabres are trying to do some more work here to improve their lineup. But so far, they just haven't had any luck with getting players who want to extend or sign there. So we'll see, because obviously that's a big part of it. You're not going to want to give up the assets if the player's not going to stick around. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news or rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.